Carlson tonight. The FBI has conducted a number of politically sensitive investigations in the past couple of years, and no single agent has been more closely involved in more of them than Peter Strzok. Strzok helped lead the investigation into Hillary Clinton's email server. He was personally responsible for changing then-Director Jim Comey's finding in that case from what it was originally, gross negligence, to the much less serious, extreme carelessness. Strzok went on to sign the order launching the federal investigation into collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia, the one that has paralyzed the federal government for more than a year, even as has dramatically boosted the ratings at a number of progressive cable channels. Strzok also oversaw the interview of Michael Flynn at the White House, the one that led to felony charges against the former national security advisor. And until August, Strzok was a central member of Robert Mueller's independent counsel investigation. Like Zelig, he's everywhere. Peter Strzok is a major figure in American political history. His fingerprints are all over events that will likely send people to prison, events your grandkids will be learning about years from now. So it is vital that Peter Strzok's ability and his integrity are beyond question. Unfortunately, we are no longer convinced of either one, with evidence. Yesterday, Fox News obtained copies of the famous text messages that Strzok sent to his mistress, Lisa Page, the ones that got him kicked off the Mueller probe last summer. They're devastating. In one exchange from August of 2016, Page told Strzok, quote, "Maybe you're meant to stay where you are at the FBI because you're meant to protect the country from that menace." Now, what menace would that be? Well, just days before, Strzok had signed off on the start of the FBI's investigation into ties between Russia and Donald Trump. Later that month, Strzok texted this to Page, quote, "I want to believe the path you threw out for consideration in Andy's office, that there's no way Trump gets elected, but I'm afraid we can't take that risk. It's like an insurance policy in the unlikely event you die before you're 40. Now, the Andy in question apparently is Deputy FBI Director Andrew McCabe. McCabe, you'll remember, came under fire when his wife accepted hundreds of thousands of dollars in political donations from Bill and Hillary Clinton's best friend, Terry McAuliffe, at the same time that McCabe himself was running the FBI's Washington office and helping to oversee the Hillary Clinton email investigation. A clear conflict. And yet, for some reason, McCabe did not recuse himself from that investigation. Now it looks like top FBI officials met in McCabe's office to plan some kind of insurance against Trump becoming president. Would that insurance include hamstringing the presidency with a politically motivated Russia investigation? We can only guess, though that would have been an effective plan. So this trove of text messages does raise deep and troubling questions about the political motivations of the leadership over at the FBI. But it also makes you wonder about the intellectual caliber of the people running that place. As you read the messages, Strzok comes off less like an incorruptible G-man of old and more like a drunk guy on Facebook. In the spring of 2016, for example, Strzok exchanged a series of strikingly banal messages with his mistress about the presidential race. Quote, "OMG, Trump's an idiot," he said in one message. "America will get what the voting public deserves." A little weird coming from a public servant. Around the time of the Democratic convention, Strzok sent this message to his girlfriend, quote, "Congrats on a woman nominated for president in a major party, exclamation point. About damn time, exclamation point." Later, he enthused that Hillary should win the 2016 presidential race, quote, 100 million to 0. During the Republican convention, Strzok ridiculed the Trump family, messaging Page in all caps, "Turn it on, 3 exclamation points. The douchebags are about to come out. You can tell by the excitable clapping." Keep in mind, this is the man the New York Times described as, quote, "one of the most experienced and trusted FBI counterintelligence investigators." Other fawning accounts in the press painted him as a fusion of Sherlock Holmes, J. Edgar Hoover, and Batman. When you read his text, Peter Strzok sounds a lot like the 6th host of The View. That's not good news for Robert Mueller's investigation of Russia. The legitimacy of that investigation depends upon the public's faith that the people doing it are unbiased and capable of high-level thought. One man who potentially could restore some legitimacy to this investigation is the Deputy Attorney General, Rod Rosenstein. Yet in testimony today before Congress, Rosenstein insisted that there's no problem at all. Everything is fine.
Expressed concern with certain aspects of certain things done by the FBI, but in general, throughout my experience working with FBI agents over the decades, I found them to be an exceptional group of public servants very loyal, faithful, and dedicated, and I believe some of the finest people that I know.
Rosenstein went on to say he has total confidence in Robert Mueller.
It would be very difficult, Congressman, for anybody to find somebody better qualified for this job. Director Mueller has, throughout his lifetime, been a dedicated and respected and heroic public servant. He, after college, volunteered to serve as a Marine in Vietnam.
He's a Vietnam veteran? Okay, so is Roy Moore. That's an impressive resume point. Obviously, America thanks him for his service. But what does it have to do with the question? Nothing, of course. It's a non sequitur. Worse than that, it's misdirection. Nobody's attacking Mueller as a man or questioning whether he'll make it to heaven in the end. Instead, the question is, why did Mueller hire so many partisan Democrats to investigate a Republican president? 9 out of 15 are Clinton donors. At least one worked for Hillary personally. Was that a wise idea? Meanwhile, why did Mueller hide the reason for Peter Strzok's demotion for so many months? And why has he consistently stonewalled Congress's many attempts to exercise its constitutional oversight of what he's doing? To answer that last question, we're happy to have Congressman John Garamendi join us. He is from California, and he's a Democrat. Congressman, thanks for coming on.
Good to be with you, Tucker.
So I would think that you would share my interest and everyone's interest in seeing that this investigation is not only fair, but has the confidence of the public.
Exactly right.
Yeah, exactly right. So given that we now know that Peter Strzok was a seething partisan, does it bother you that he had a hand in so many key investigations in the last 2 years?
As near as I can determine, the current FBI director is also a partisan. He's a Republican. He's given a substantial amount of money to the Republican causes around. And so within the FBI, there are men and women who are Democrat and Republican. I would probably, and I think you might agree with this, that the majority of the FBI team, agents and others, tend to be conservative and tend to be on the Republican side.
That tends to be true.
Yes,
that tends to be true.
Yes.
And yet Robert Mueller himself was so concerned by Strzok's partisanship that he pulled him off the investigation
as soon as he
and sent him down to HR.
As soon as he found out.
As soon as he found out, apparently, we're not exactly sure because he won't answer basic questions from Congress about this. He hid for months from Congress the existence of these texts. He won't answer questions like, what else did Strzok do? What else do we know about Strzok? Does it bother you as a member of Congress that the FBI is stonewalling your body's efforts to get answers?
Not at all. There is a criminal investigation underway. There is an investigation of national security of extreme importance to this nation, to the future democracy and the way in which we run our elections. And we ought not be in any way slowing down, harming, or stopping, or rather, in one way or another, causing that investigation to not go forward. It is about our democracy, and it is about a foreign government involvement in the democracy. What it has to do with the president is just one piece of it.
It's one piece, but here's one piece that we think we know, that the FBI apparently used this now famous Steele dossier.
Yes.
In order to inform its investigation,
yes.
And it perhaps may have paid for that dossier. Now, that's something that already happened. You're not going to be affecting the investigation by getting an answer to that question. The FBI will not answer the question, did they pay for that dossier? To what extent did they use it? It's been discredited, as you know. Why doesn't your body have the right to know that? I'm confused.
Well, whether they did or did not, the question begins with what is the dossier? The dossier has been a template for the investigations. It turns out that much of that dossier has already proven to be accurate and correct. It was important enough that the entire intelligence community looking at it informed the president that it existed so that the president would know that these issues are out there and that they were being...
Where'd that information come from, the information you just described as important and central to this investigation? Do you know where it came from? It came from Russian intelligence in part. Does that bother you?
You mean the information
in the dossier that you just said informed the investigation. So the claim is Russian intelligence influenced our election. You just said that the dossier, provided in part by Russian intelligence, influenced this investigation. Why wouldn't that bother me as a citizen?
Apparently, and we do not yet know where all of that information came from, but we know that it came from an individual who was involved in the British intelligence services, was years, perhaps 3 decades, 3 decades working on the Russian portfolio. So he knew what was going on. He had his contacts, some of whom were willing to talk to him, apparently Russians and others. So he put together the dossier. The dossier becomes an extremely important part of what has happened. It is informative.
But you don't see this as
community,
a problem? Wait, hold on. Your concern, which I think is a fair concern, is that a foreign government may have influenced our election.
Well,
okay?
We do know, at least by the intelligence agencies, that they did.
Okay, but we know that that dossier came in part from a foreign intelligence service, and the U.S. government may have paid for part of it. So why isn't that vital information? Why wouldn't you be calling the FBI today and say, what? You paid money
yes
for
or no.
information from Russian intelligence?
No.
Tell us.
No. The information came from Mr. Steele, a retired British intelligence agency.
And where do you think he got it?
He got it from a variety of sources, some of whom were undoubtedly Russians, either in Russia or maybe.
And that information provided by the Putin government influenced a U.S. investigation into a sitting president. So you just described.
I think you are way out on a limb here.
No, I'm not at all. These are publicly available facts. You're saying that that's okay, that information from Russian intelligence is influencing an investigation of the president. That seems like a big deal.
Back up a bit. We know from our intelligence agencies, who undoubtedly got information from their sources in Russia and other places, that the Russian government attempted to, and in fact did, engage in influencing the American presidential election. We also know from our intelligence agencies, who undoubtedly got information from Russians somewhere in the government or whatever their sources may be, that not only did they attempt to influence the presidential election, they attempted to hack into our electoral process.
But
that's where
by your own description, Russian intelligence is influencing a federal investigation into the president.
Oh, you are way out on a limb.
I am not out on a limb at all. No, I'm not. We know that some of that information in the dossier came from Russian intelligence. You said the dossier was a basis of this investigation.
No, I said it was an element in the basis.
It was a basis of it.
It informed the
So, look, here's one thing we can agree on. The FBI should settle this for us. Did they pay money for that dossier? What was the extent of their contacts with Mr. Steele? Where did the information come from? Congress can't get answers to this. Why?
It may be interesting, but so what? So
because it would show that a foreign government is influencing a federal investigation into election officials.
Back up.
Seems like kind of a big deal, no?
No, it's not necessarily a foreign government. What we're talking about is that the information in the dossier and the information collected by all of our intelligence agencies, some of that information undoubtedly came from sources in Russia. We do know this. We do know that from all of that gathering of information, the dossier being but one piece of it, perhaps even a small piece of it, we do know that the Russian government at the highest levels attempted and, in fact, did
because our Congress, which is supposed to be
California
providing oversight of these agencies and of this process, is content to sit back and take the word of federal bureaucrats. I don't understand why.
Well, you saw these hearings. They've been going on for the last...
You guys could compel them to answer your questions. You could shut them down, and you should. I mean, how would... they're basically saying, we're not answering your questions, and you put up with that?
You are dealing with a fly on a dog's back here. What you need to do is to take a look at the overarching issue involved here. There are things we know. All of our intelligence agencies said Russia involved itself in the American election. Our intelligence agency said that Russia hacked our electoral system unsuccessfully, at least as far as we know.
They're hacking our investigation. I just want more information, and I think we can both agree.
We all want information.
Good. Congressman, thank you. Good to see you.
My pleasure.